Welcome to the Better Business Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Zelan. Join me week after week as I interview high-level entrepreneurs on their journey to success, both in business and personal development. Each week presents new stories to learn from and new ideas on how to run a better business. Stay updated with all the guests we'll have by subscribing to this podcast. Welcome to Better Business with Austin Zelan. Today, I'm super excited to have special guest AJ Osborne. He's got a bunch of different companies that I'm excited to talk to him about. And I think you guys will also realize that sometimes having multiple businesses is a good idea. So depending on what business you're in, what trajectory you have in life, what career path, you may want to consider having multiple businesses. And so I think AJ's really mastered that in his own lane. And I'm excited to hear about that and have him share with you guys that journey. So AJ, thank you so much for coming on here. Very excited to have you. And could you please share with our audience today what type of business you're in right now and how did you get there? Like, what was the trajectory that got you to that business?
Yeah, so I think the simplest way is I'm self-storage, like the actual self-storage facilities, units. So we do kind of everything in that space, meaning we build them, we buy them, we turn them around, but we view it as a business, not so much as like a real estate hold. So we built a vertically integrated real estate shop where we do all kind of lines associated with everything storage. And we've been doing it for a long time, prior to 2008. And I really got into it because we were trying to offset earned sales income from doing insurance brokerage sales.
Okay.
So trying to offset, well, obviously your tax
and accidentally
really high.
Started a business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was like, we got to do something here to get our taxes down. We got to do something to get passive income. And so we started doing that. And then it was like, wow, this is really good. We like this. And then we eventually just moved completely out of that other industry into the self-storage. And originally it was all acquisition. So I viewed it as storage facilities are not like real estate, they're actual businesses. So I was buying a real estate asset and turning it into a business. And so we would make it high performing through revenue management, marketing. We created more like a franchise system for customers that we could spread out across different states. And we built that up to over 3 million net rentable square feet now. And within it, we have our own tech stack that we own, build our own software systems. We have our own marketing. We do the architecture. We do the debt brokerage. We do the education. I have the best-selling book in our industry and the largest podcast of self-storage in the world. So it's just kind of all compiled along in this little industry that kind of blew up over the last 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know there was a podcast for self-storage.
Yep.
So how many of them are there?
There's a lot. Yeah, there was a lot actually, which is funny.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I never would have expected that, but that's super cool. You know, I feel like you've really looked into your business and found ways to add additional revenue and add additional value. And I think that's the true spirit of entrepreneurship is not just, hey, let me do this one thing and hopefully it works out. But you're really viewing it as a business on where can I add revenue? Where can I create additional revenue? What else do I need to be selling? You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is really, really cool. So, and do you do a lot of like mindset training or anything like that? How important do you think mindset is to your business?
So I think mindset is, especially starting out, it's huge. It can be one of the biggest hurdles. And I think it's a lot just because of misconceptions we have. We're taught even in the educational system that it's, in order to get a pass, you have to know the answers. That's not how entrepreneurship works at all. In fact, it's the opposite. You do before you know, and you figure it out and you build, right? And that is so counterintuitive to what we're taught and told that we're supposed to do. In order to get to the job, you have to know how to do this to have value. And in entrepreneurship, that is completely upside down and backwards. And so that mindset portion of training yourself to say, no, I jump, right? And then I build and we figure it out and we can find solutions. We can move forward without having to know. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that leap of faith is really scary for a lot of entrepreneurs, and then it's like you make that leap of faith and it's like, okay, well, sometimes it doesn't work out right away and you got to keep trying and you got to keep pushing. And I think one of the most interesting things about entrepreneurship is that you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and sacrificing and giving up opportunities and giving up comfort and safety and all these things for a potential reward. You don't even know if it's going to happen. You know, and it's really, it's a big like leap of faith to make that your life. You know, sometimes it's leaving the comfort of a job. I know I had to leave the comfort of a job in order to pursue entrepreneurship, but it's been the best journey of my life. I think it's really like a journey of self-discovery. You really learn a lot about yourself. And I've heard it said that the market is like a mirror. It's a reflection of who you are. If you're a good person, that's what's going to be reflected back to you from the market. If you're greedy, that's going to be reflected back from the market. If you're insecure, it's going to be reflected back. And so it's really like a sounding board. You go out into the marketplace, things happen, and now you're like, okay, what do I need to fix that's causing this thing to happen? And sometimes it's just a mindset thing. So
those feedback loops are so important in the key to entrepreneurship, because that's what it is. When you're building a business, it is constant A/B testing. This didn't work. It's not about being right. It's about trying things and seeing which is the best, and then leaning into that, understanding that almost everything you do in a business is going to fail at some level or degree because you're creating. And you have to be okay with that, and you have to minimize that risk and learn from it instead of having it stop or making you give up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to touch on what you said, I think humans were designed to be creators and to be creative. So we create things, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be perfect. 100%. And so it's our job to keep creating and creating and creating until we maybe get it close to perfect.
And that's another thing I think that really holds people back, is this idea of perfection. And I can't start until I'm ready, till I know how. It's not good enough. I'm not going to take it to market yet. It's not, and that's just not how the market works. And that's not how it will never be perfect, right? But entrepreneurship is that pathway in trying to become better. But you can't start without having the market feedback. It can't be what the market wants. It's so counterintuitive in a lot of ways than how we're raised or trained.
Yeah, definitely. So some people watching this might be thinking about their business, and they're like, okay, I want to improve my business. I want to keep iterating. I want to keep creating. What are some ways that you've kind of taken that feedback and then applied it to your business to make it better?
So when I look at feedback, I think we have two things. We have internal and external. So customer facing feedback, and then internal, how the machine is running. So we have our employees, our processes and systems, and the feedback loops are very different. So when I'm looking at internal, some of the feedback loops, even within our organization, I may be seeing things that are maybe employees aren't as happy, or there's some problems here or there, but I can't quite identify the problem, right? When it's customers, it's almost always really quick and clear, right? I don't like this about this. I want this. You need to do this. I'm not happy with that person. So it's much easier on the front end with customer facing to take that feedback loop and immediately say, let's change it. Let's do it, right? Internally though, you may not even understand that process that you're doing is taking twice as long as it should be, because the outcome then is the product not getting to market. But the process that was doing it is one department or one piece of the iteration to get that product to market. And so really you have to be much more diligent in looking at the whole picture and getting good communication and feedback with not only people within your organization, but when you don't have a big organization, when it's just you, right? To be able to look at those different and measure. So all about KPIs and measuring, because that's the only way we can figure it out, right? How many calls are you making? How many calls are closing? You have 2 different scripts. If you're doing a sales, do you have 3 different scripts? And out of those 3 different scripts, you make 100 calls on each one of those scripts. Which one closed the most? What time of days was it happening? If you're not looking at that data or that KPI within the business, you don't know what to fix, because there's no customer yelling at you about it, right? And so it's a different thing. But to really optimize the business internally, you have to be obsessed with KPIs.
Yeah, definitely. So on that topic of KPIs, how do you set your KPIs? Is it just stuff that you kind of came up with on your own? Do you use some sort of system? I know there's many standard KPIs that people can use, but how do you come up with those KPIs? And then how often do you track them? Is it a daily thing? Is it a quarterly thing, monthly? What is it for you?
So I think KPIs can get overdone too, meaning that people can track everything. That's not good, because then you're in the business of KPIs. Like all of a sudden, that's what you're doing all day is tracking, and your employees are doing it and they're obsessed. It's more important to focus on a handful of KPIs, but then be the right KPIs, the right outcomes. So when from there, I can look and dig deeper. So I want to measure everything, but I'm looking at the KPIs that have a direct impact on the outcome, right?
Okay.
So, all right, if we want to get 3 new deals in, all right, how many LOIs, letters and offerings did we write out? Well, we did 20, right? And then how many were accepted? And that should give us a good idea on the lead funnel, how many we have to increase, how many we have to. If the answer is 0, then let's look down go further down from the KPI. So the one that we're focusing on is, I view, a leverage KPI, meaning that one is the one that really leverages outcomes. If you pull on that one or if you make it better, and I don't think you should have more than a few. Like really at the top level, if you're a CEO, if you're running the company, you should really have a few. Each department or each layer of your business, whether that's marketing, they can have individuals within that own metric. If it's just you doing it, by the way, it's okay to have a few in marketing and a few in sales and a few in product or whatever those lines of business are. But there should really be 3 that you track all the time. And so I look at those really, I mean, I look at weekly maybe, but monthly and quarterly, now that we're set up and running, those are the big, because I'm looking more trends. When we were starting out or when it was a much more scrappy team, everything, it was daily. Yeah. And if you're in sales, it's daily. It's almost hourly, right? How many calls are you making? What are the things that you're doing? Because the outputs, when you're dealing with certain types of business like sales, not like manufacturing, is so sensitive to those KPIs. So you should really be focusing on those. And the simpler your business model is, the easier that KPI should be, right? And you should just say, I know that X amount of calls equals X outcome. I know that X amount of ads will equal X amount of customers. And if you only have a few core competencies, stick to it and just become the best at that 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great because, sometimes people do go overboard with KPIs and they have just way too many. And at a certain point, they're not really sure what it all means. They've created this KPI soup and it doesn't really mean anything. So I definitely think that people could get a lot of value out of tracking some core KPIs. And I mean, if somebody's watching this and they're wanting to find out what KPIs they should be tracking. I know sometimes people bring in an outside consulting team to help them identify those. Have you ever brought anybody in from outside, or has it just been your own personal experience?
So I've always depended on some kind of outside people, whether that's coaches, other things like that. I've never done things all on my, I don't even believe that. I don't believe that anybody does that. This idea of even like this self-made entrepreneur, I recoil when I hear that. Because I'm like, if that's your idea, I definitely don't want to invest in you because that means you think that you need to do it all on your own. So I do not believe that. But I'm also very careful that we are not just taking blindly outside. So I like to get outside people on specifics, right? And so whether that's marketing, and help us design, help us build out, and then they will give us, and we can look at those KPIs. So the answer is yes. I've never brought someone in as the company as a whole, though, and said, hey, we're going to restructure the whole entire company. But within every single department, or I mean, with some of our companies, there's always been a hand of a consultant or a professional. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the way to go, and as far as being like specific with your consultants and coaches, there's, it's very powerful. And I've done that in my own business as well, where I find somebody who's just the best at this one thing.
Yes.
And I hire them and I pay them whatever I need to pay them. And they come in and they just make this thing or this process or whatever, just totally optimized, like amazing. And then it's like, okay, well, now that this is so good, the next thing that we can do that's going to be like a leverage KPI, like you said, is going to be this thing. So now we have somebody come in and do that. And so kind of you build your ship piece by piece, using professionals and consultants and all that stuff. And it's very, very powerful. So now besides human professionals, we have this artificial intelligence that's coming out, and we have these companies that could potentially be run by an AI CEO. Do you ever think that's going to happen?
I do in certain industries, certain aspects of it. I think that there are a lot of things within society that will be automated. And it's not, when I look at it, I view it as, we've had different phases of technology that has come in within the economy, and some were really useful. Like the first round of the internet was huge for society.
Yeah.
It really optimized and transformed the workplace, right? But the second phase of the information age was a connectivity phase. And that really didn't optimize the economy. That gave us social media. That gave us things like that, right? It concentrated because of the connectivity, wealth, and power leverage, but it didn't optimize really a lot. Like when the internet came out, it really did. The internet displaced entire industries. The internet, it changed the way we fundamentally worked. I view AI as the same thing as the internet, is that there will be whole industries which will be leveled out, just be gone. Because what the internet did is it made it irrelevant. It bypassed those industries and those actions. I believe that's the same thing that AI will do. Yes, you're going to have functionalities like, I believe, social media was on AI 2.0, which will be more like people see like interfacing with another human who's not a human, it's AI, right? But the real change that's going to happen with AI, it's just going to be leveling out things in our business that we don't need people to do at all anymore. And that's a good thing. A lot of people think that's bad, but really it's just optimizing so humans can do more, so that we can rise up.
Yeah.
The internet just made us better professionals. We used our minds more. We didn't do nearly as much mundane material, right? AI, I believe, will do the exact same thing and transform the way that we work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a next big step for society and for even the marketplace, like business and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a huge step. And so, are you using AI currently in your company?
Yeah. We use AI on a whole bunch of different levels, mostly admin. So when we look at it, that can be sourcing, that can be building, anything information related, creation. I see things like marketing totally transformed by AI, graphics, right, visuals, right, all that kind of stuff is already just being upended, and I only believe that will continue. And then analytics, our ability to process data is going to be unlike anything that we've ever seen, and that requires a mass amount of data. And something that we've been working with in my business and industry is it's been like for the last few years, accumulate data. Because as we accumulate it, I'm like, we can worry about what to do with it later, but AI allows us to do that. All of a sudden now you can take information and pull things out of it that you just couldn't have done, or it would have been so massively intensive to do otherwise. I think that's going to really, data analytics is going to be wild here in the next 5-10 years. And two, this is already something that's been going on. I mean, BlackRock, which owns the most assets of any company in the world, they did that from Aladdin. And Aladdin was an AI program that they came about in 2014 or 15. And a lot of people don't know that. But the largest private equity company in the world was transformed through an AI product that they created, whatever it was, 8-9 years ago, that they were utilizing called AI. So AI has been being used. The government uses AI, right? Everything. It's more noticeable for us because of ChatGPT, things like that, because it's now customer facing, centric. And as all technology does, it goes downstream. Yeah. So at first, only the top, whoever can spend the most money, get to use it. Now it's mainstream to even mom and pops. We can all use AI to some way.
Yeah. So if somebody's wanting to run a better business and they're hearing all these AI tools that are coming out and stuff like that, do you think it would be effective for them to start implementing AI in their sales process?
Absolutely. So there's a few things that I like about AI. I would caution anyone, though, if you don't know anything about it, you can get lost in it, like all these things, right? And if you're ADHD, be very careful about jumping on the internet and searching AI. You're going to end up making pictures and things like that. Waste a lot of time, right? But I think that when you look at the sales process, one of the biggest things that you can literally tell it to generate me 4 different types of scripts, sales scripts. I can say, hey, I have a customer that I'm targeting that is a family with 3 kids that lives in Iowa. Generate a sales script for that market. Like, and it'll just do it. And that's, I mean, you used to have to pay consultants to do that kind of stuff, mega bucks. And AI can transform your sales process. Where do we call? When do we do it? What ad should I generate? How should that ad look like? When should it be placed in these markets? Should I use Facebook, Google, right? So all of a sudden, the whole online marketing ad space, I think that AI totally disrupts that whole sales process and the sales funnel. If you have a sales funnel and your sales funnel isn't being utilized by AI in some way, you're already behind.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And we've actually been using it to like nurture our leads before they ever get to the closer team. So that way a lead comes in, AI is talking to them. It's, making sure that they're qualified, making sure that their goals are aligned with whatever offer we have at that time. And from there, we're sending them to the closers, and now they're not spending as much time trying to talk to this person because they've already been nurtured.
Yes, 100%. It's way more effective. Your close rate's higher, and then you drop your cost overall. That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you use social media for your business?
Yes, we do. We use it a lot. Okay. So social media we use to, it's the top line of a funnel. And we use in all our marketing, everything that we're doing, whether that's investors, whether that's part of our educational companies, anything else like that, the social media allows us to, first of all, direct target, which is rare. But it also allows us to bring people into an ecosystem so we can nurture them organically. And then through that nurturing process, we can turn them into more controllable leads through an email capture or something like that, right? It's all about taking somebody from one ecosystem and moving them into another. And this is a spot that AI really helps out with. It's a way that we can directly talk to our consumers, our investors, our customers. And it's obviously very powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you about the platform move because, if it's on social media, if it's on Facebook, if it's on Instagram, they own the data at the end of the day. Yours. You want to get it offline to like an email list or something like that. And so, if anybody is watching this and they're building a funnel or they're building their social media page, just make sure that all those leads that you're collecting, get them on an email list, because then at least you own that data. And if Facebook ever shut down or they blocked you or banned you or whatever, you still have all that data and all those customers in your lead list. So very important. And then, of course, you can leverage AI to reach out to them and nurture them and set appointments and all that good stuff. So it's really cool to see the developments in that area. And I'm very excited to see the future and how it's going to continue progressing. So besides AI, I think that there are some other softwares and tools that can be used to increase the efficiency of your business. What are some favorite tools that you've used in your company? Maybe they're industry specific, maybe not. But what are some tools that you found online that you've used in your company?
So more industry specific one, we actually built a SaaS product. So we built a software, an asset management, so it actually controls and runs our facilities. But that's Tenant Inc. It's a product called Hummingbird, which we do to more automate the actual running of our self-storage assets. But within our businesses and running, I try to keep things relatively simple because, once again, softwares are there's so many cool ones and so many things you can do.
Yeah.
But I try to have a centralized platform for communications at different levels. We use different things like on the education, we'll use Kajabi, we use Basecamp. We have a few of these that we use in general that are touch points, communications, distribution of products, and then tracking. We have some pretty high-end, heavy accounting softwares because we have to merge in not only all the assets, but we also have to merge in the accounting of the different businesses. So our software systems that we utilize on the back end for accounting, those are pretty powerful pieces at this point. And that works out really well. But we also look multiple layers deeper where we do things like revenue management and software specifically for that, which I don't think a lot of people really look at. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how do we optimize the revenue that we have within? And that can be everything from pricing structures to even offerings to what customers are doing what. And so we try to get in pretty nitty gritty and use tools that help us leverage that to get a few a few percentages of improvement on as you're scaling and as you're growing, that makes a big, big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Tracking is key, and then finding ways to optimize always improves the operation. So, what are as you were scaling your business, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've encountered, and how did you overcome them?
So, I think the biggest hurdle that people overcome is when the business scales, they don't scale with it. And I mean that you have to become a different type of leader. So I view leadership in degrees of separation. I believe there's 3 degrees of separation for leaderships. And the degrees of separation is the separation of you and the customer. So when you're an entrepreneur and you have no employees, you're interfacing directly with the customer. So that's no degree of separation.
Yeah.
In order to become a leader, you have to lead people. So that's like your first hire, right? Well, the first degree of separation is really easy because you just tell that employee, go do this. It's very simple, right? I tell you what to do, you go do it. 1 degree of separation. 2 degrees of separation, though, is different because now you have management. Now, if you're a second degree leader, that means you have to be really good at building out processes and systems by which the manager now makes sure employees follow. Now, the 3rd degree leader and that 3rd degree of separation, this is really hard for most people because that means you now have to be a professional CEO that is actually not really involved in the creation process. That generally means you have a C-suite underneath you and you are now actually away. You're not creating processes really in systems anymore. You are guiding, leading, and it's the difference of you as an entrepreneur through these stages, 0 to 3, is massive. And most entrepreneurs never make it. So the vast majority of entrepreneurs, even if the company is successful, they end up hiring professional leaders and 3rd degree people to run their business. They go and get them from Harvard or wherever else, and they bring them in because they can't make that jump. It's so different from anything they've ever been used to. So I view that in order to be successful in scaling the business, you have to really focus on what you're doing, what your value is, and you need to be able to say, here's my weaknesses and skills. I need to get outside people, coaches, right? I need to get that. I need to get whether it's professionals in, and you need to become a person that manages resources, not necessarily manages all the things. So entrepreneurs, we love to do everything. Oh, I'll just do it myself, right? Because that's where we value. I built this thing up for myself, right? That doesn't work when you scale at all. You have to manage resources and you got to get really good at that. And you got to get really good at tearing down barriers for people so that they can be successful. And I think that's the biggest thing for anybody that has a business or is an entrepreneur. Most of the time, you're getting in the way of your own business.
I love that. Yeah. And I like how you broke it down in the different levels of separation, degrees of separation as a leader, because leadership is such a broad topic. And sometimes people just think about it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm a leader. Yeah. But like, at what level?
At what level?
Yeah. And there's so much to be said for those people who have been able to build that C-suite, who's now creating the processes and they have management and all that stuff. It's really cool. It's a well-oiled machine. That's when it becomes, I believe, a real business. Yes. It's not just a high-paying job. It's a real business. It's a system that operates smoothly with or without the CEO.
Exactly. So, independent of you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that's really cool. So leadership is one hurdle that people might be facing. What's another hurdle that you've maybe seen in your business or somebody else's business where it's just like, just got to learn this one thing or get this one skill or, this one thing you need to overcome to get to that next level in business?
So first of all, sales, sales. You are a salesperson. I don't care if you say, oh, I'm not. If you are a business owner and you lead a company, you're selling everybody. You're selling your employees, your customers, you're selling vendors, you're selling people to come work for you. Once again, you have to recruit resources. That's your job. People, connections, education, information, on and on and on, right? You need to do that. So I think first and foremost, sales. Get better at sales. Learn sales. And then the next thing is, when you're looking at, okay, my company, what needs to go, generally speaking, there's bottlenecks in terms of capital and means of production. I don't have enough money or I don't have enough means. And this can come back down to not only the managing of the resources well and being a salesperson well, right? But really understanding in your business, when are we going to have capital constraints? And with the capital constraints, when they come in, you need to be able to anticipate it. And then you need to understand how we alleviate those capital constraints. And some of them are not good. So some people, their businesses fail, not because the business actually failed, but simply because they had a successful business, they had capital constraints, so they just went the easy route. They got an open line of credit on a floating rate to get them through that capital constraint. And now all of a sudden they got $1 million on a credit line, which is fine at 2%. But then when it shifted to 8%, the business tanks. And the business was totally fine. It was successful, but they didn't manage those capital constraints well, and they didn't understand them well enough. And so they went with just maybe an off-the-shelf product for their company, and it ended up tanking. I see that a lot. And I think a lot of times that comes to the focus on that business leader, that their job is not what they think it is. So they're like, okay, well, that's just a banker. Give me what I need. My job is to make sure that customer's happy. That's not your job when you're owning a business and running a business, right? It's to manage the resources. So you need to spend way more time on figuring out capital constraints, production constraints. Do you have the right people that can figure that out? That's where you need to allocate your time. And you cannot scale unless you get over those barriers.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like a capital constraint, what that might look like?
Absolutely.
Where can they be hiding?
Yes. So capital constraints can hide mainly in time, turnover of capital or products. So you have, let's say you're selling actual physical products. You have to buy, you sell the product, the capital comes in and it replenishes the coffers. Well, now I have to spend ad spend to sell the product. Well, I shoot up my ad spend, my product sells, that's great. But the time that it takes to turn over capital, I already have to produce new material and I don't have it. So it's not that the product didn't sold, it's not that we didn't, it's the gap between the capital, you building the product, the marketing of the product, it's selling, and the money coming back into the account. So what they do is they sell further out because the marketing is going. So they're selling. I'm selling my business services. I'm selling my products. I'm selling all of these things. But then I can't fulfill because my capital strain to produce, and it'll come back, but it's the time frame. I need 2 months. Well, I have new sales within these 2 months. So then I have short-term capital crisis. So then you go out and do these things like credit lines, or then you have to give an investor to give up equity, right? And so understanding that turnover capital in business, this is something I see everyone struggle with. Everyone. Yeah. If you're a business leader, you will struggle with this. I struggle with this, right? Because sometimes your business grows faster, sometimes it grows slower. And that's okay, but most people, it takes them off guard and they can't solve it. And they come either a gap where their capital can't meet, right? Yeah. Or it just completely collapses the company. They no longer have the cash reserves or the capital to fuel their own success because they're not turning it over quick enough. Major problem.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's a great place to look, is like what's taking a long time in your business process. And these capital constraints can be hiding like in time, like you said. So what's a good solution for something like this? Is it just offering maybe a product that you can deliver faster on? You know, I'm assuming maybe there's some sort of like immediate delivery that you could do on some things and try to get that capital.
And I like what you said there, because I believe it's in the offering structures, meaning that, okay, if you're offering a product and service, are you taking any capital up front, or is it a pay as you go? Like a lot of people say, all right, we get paid for this and it's paid in installments every month, but do you have an onboarding fee, right? Do you have like what capital's coming in at first to get it off the ground and get it moving? And so the offering that you make, pay in full, right? Or we need paid within this period of time in order to hold your place. There needs to be a capital bridge, and that can be done in an offering. It may spread it out, but it doesn't leave it hanging out. And that's a really, really important piece. Now, the other side is the actual funding of it, meaning that cash on hand. So we want to grow, but we know we need cash on hand to turn over inventory. Because what happens is people start spending money on marketing, all sorts of stuff. It ramps up. They have the gap. And guess what they cut out? Marketing. They start cutting expenses, and they cut the variable expenses that actually fuel the growth. So then what happens? They go back down. They get the cash reserves back in. But now guess what? They're in a slump again because they shut the marketing machine off. So then they take that money, put it back in, and they're right back in it again. And so this up and this down, You need to measure out, have cash reserves, cash on hand, so that it's a more steady increase. Or financing or partnering for short-term debt, that's fine, but you need to understand how those things work within your business. Floating rate, right, versus a fixed, and where's that backed? How's those negotiations working with the banks or those capital partners? How long do they wait to get paid? And then what are the terms on those agreements? So that when you're down, those agreements don't get pulled, and then it pulls the rug out from underneath you and tanks you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another aspect of that is that it eats into your margins as well. You know, you're paying interest on that, and it might kind of solve a short-term problem, but long-term, it's not a great solution.
It's a short-term win and a long-term death.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you're kind of stuck in that cycle, and you just got to keep getting more and more and more and more. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so we have these capital constraints that can happen. And what I've seen some companies do, and I've actually done this in my own business, is like you said, between that moment that you spend money on ads and you actually collect the capital, it's like, what can we do in that gap? What can we do in that space of time? And one thing that I've done is I've launched products specifically that would try and recoup some of that ad spend right on the front end.
Yes.
So some sort of immediate delivery, digital product, whatever it is. Yeah, because that way you recoup those costs right away.
Earn the capital instead of bridge it.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even have to like necessarily profit on those products.
But it smooths it out.
Yeah, exactly. It helps you a lot with that cash flow issue. And so I think that if somebody's watching this and they want to try and even out some of that cash flow, I would definitely consider something on the front end, whether it's a training or a guide or maybe even some sort of class, depending on your product, to collect some of that cash up front and recoup some of that ad spend before you get the closed deals in.
Non-capital intensive sales that are easy to scale, like digital products, things like that. Those are great buffers until the big wins come in.
Exactly.
And it not only smooths it out, but then it makes your big wins that much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And it protects you from these short-term loans and stuff like that.
Yep. Which nobody thinks is really a big deal, but then it's amazing how many businesses are destroyed over very small capital crisis that you look at it and it's like, that should have never tanked this company.
Yeah.
But because when you need capital and you can't get it, right? That's when capital evaporates out of the market. That's the problem. Now you can't get it at all. And so you're like, this was never a problem until right now in the marketplace. And now capital in a business is like oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
When you have it, you don't even think about it. When it's gone, it's the only thing you think about because you're going to die. And you need to be a little more proactive about that so you don't all of a sudden have no oxygen left.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it. It's just like oxygen, the business dies without it. So, okay, cool. Now, any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with? They're wanting to run a better business. So what can they do? What can they immediately apply to run a better business starting today?
So I'd look at expenses and revenue, things that are outside of your control, and flipping it, meaning that, okay, well, I have this huge lease payment. Well, is there a way that you could buy your own building and then be paying yourself, right, and offset that? So how do I turn expense into profit centers? Yeah. And then how do I fix expenses or control them, right? And then it's the same vice versa with revenue. It's like, okay, how do we expand, but how do we get rid of fluctuations? So not even looking at so much the future or anything else, but turn internal, look at every single line item. All right, expense. How do I either make this expense into an asset? That's how we ended up with a vertically integrated system, because I looked at this huge expense and I said, let's just turn that into a business. And so then all of a sudden a $300,000 a year expense ended up being a $500,000 a year revenue, which was an $800,000 swing in a year for my business. And so that was internal. I didn't need to grow anymore or anything to do that. So look at that P&L and start analyzing those individual line items and seeing what you can do there to switching it around to stabilize cash flows and to really secure those known liabilities moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on again. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you all for watching. This is Better Business with Austin Zelan, and I'll see you all in the next episode.